Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 71. A Debt of the Past. Ethan blinked in surprise. The girl who had just walked out was small, even younger than Lila by a few years. He didn't know her name, so he simply gestured for her to come closer. You switch clothes with her. From now on, you'll be working at the front desk, Ethan said, before turning to Jade. And you? What was your name again? Oh right, Jade Taylor. You'll be in charge of cleaning from now on. The young girl looked at Ethan, then turned to Todd with a questioning gaze. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but Todd spoke first. Ethan, she's only here temporarily. She comes in the morning and evening to clean, but the rest of the time, she's in school. Yeah, the young girl quickly added. I'm a senior in high school. I can't work full-time. Ethan shrugged. Fine. Then you handle cleaning outside. As for Jade, she's on permanent restroom duty. No need for her to come out. Just seeing her annoys me. His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Jade stiffened, looking as if she wanted to protest. But before she could speak, Ethan continued. By the way, if you want to quit, now's the time to say it. I'll approve it immediately. But if you do, you still have to finish out the month. Otherwise, feel free to take it up with labor arbitration. The onlookers exchanged glances. This was brutal. Jade was seriously out of luck. Even if she quit now, she was stuck scrubbing toilets for another month. Ethan turned to the lawyer. There's nothing in her contract that specifies what job she has to do here, right? Correct. Which means if I assign her to a task and she refuses, I can fire her without paying severance? That's right. And if she insults me, I can fire her on the spot. No compensation needed? At that moment, Ethan caught Jade out of the corner of his eye. She had just stood up, face red with anger, her hand raised as if about to point at him and let loose a string of curses. Yes, the lawyer answered. If she verbally attacks you, not only can you fire her, but you'd also have grounds to sue for defamation. The lawyer's tone was professional, but his face was twitching like he was trying to hold back laughter. Good to know. Thanks. If I need anything else, I'll have someone call you. Ethan gave the lawyer a polite nod. Sure, the lawyer said before making a quick exit. If he stayed any longer, he was sure he'd suffocate trying not to laugh. This Ethan guy was a real piece of work. What he didn't know was that, to Ethan, Jade wasn't just some random employee. She was the reason his high school years had been a nightmare. 3 years of misery. 3 years of humiliation. All because of her. Now, she stood there, trembling with rage, finger still raised, but no words came out. The spectators were speechless. This guy bought an entire business just to mess with someone? Over a severance payout he clearly didn't even need? If she annoyed him so much, why not just fire her outright? Why go through all this trouble? What they didn't understand was that Ethan had endured 3 years of torment because of her. 1 month? That was nothing. I quit. Jade spat through gritted teeth. Great. Approved. Restrooms that way. Ethan's expression didn't change. Jade slammed her hand onto the counter with a loud thud. Ethan didn't let up. Got a problem? And no, she stammered, suddenly unsure of herself. Her bravado faded as she walked toward the restrooms, silent tears sliding down her face. She couldn't afford to break her contract. Even if Ethan didn't drag her to labor court, he could slap her with a bogus lawsuit and take away 2 months' worth of pay. And payday was only a few days away. She had credit card bills, impending loan payments. She had fought hard for this high-paying job. And somehow she had ended up working for him. Years of scraping by in the real world had hardened her. She had thought she wasn't that naive high school girl anymore. So why, the moment she saw Ethan again, had she fallen right back into the same cycle? She had no idea. She had run into plenty of old classmates over the years, but none of them ever made her feel this way. But every time Jade saw Ethan, she couldn't help herself. She had to mock him, insult him, look down on him. It was a habit, compulsion. As she walked, she tried to push the thoughts away. Just endure it for a month. In the meantime, I'll find another job. But then... Wait! Ethan's voice rang out just as she reached the restroom door. Jade clenched her fists, an unexplainable irritation bubbling up inside her. She turned around, scowling. What now? Give me back what you took, Ethan said coolly. Do that and I might let you walk away right now, with your full paycheck. Jade frowned. What are you talking about? Ethan raised his arm and tapped his wrist. Her expression shifted. The furrow in her brow smoothed out. You're serious? Ethan's heart skipped. So she really does have it. And judging by her reaction, she might even know where it is. Yes, he confirmed. Give it back, and I'll settle your pay right now. Jade hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll go look for it. You can find it? Ethan pressed. I think so, she muttered. Good. I'm coming with you. Without waiting for a response, he walked straight out of the gym. Jade hesitated, but after a brief pause, she followed. The crowd was left staring, dumbfounded, as the two disappeared around the corner. What the hell just happened? What was so important that Ethan, who had been dead set on making Jade's life miserable, was suddenly willing to let her go? Nobody could have guessed. Because the item in question wasn't some priceless artifact or rare collectible. It was just a cheap, childish bracelet. Fate was a strange thing. All these years, Jade had barely thought about it. Back then, she had snatched it from Ethan and tossed it into a box filled with random trinkets. When her family lost everything, the bank seized nearly all their belongings. The only thing she managed to take with her was that box. An hour later, Ethan and Jade returned to the gym. The moment they stepped inside, Ethan spotted Todd downstairs and called out, "Settle her paycheck." Todd raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I was just about to talk to you about something. We should go over the handover process." Handover? Ethan blinked. He had completely forgotten about that part. The realization hit, he had absolutely no clue how to run this place. Seeing his blank expression, Todd smirked. "If you don't want to manage it yourself, you could always hire someone to do it for you." Hire someone? Who? Ethan ran through a mental list of people he knew, and came up with nothing. His social circle was tiny. He had always been a homebody, barely interacting with anyone outside of school. Other than a handful of classmates, he didn't really know anyone. Crap. Just as he was starting to stress, a lady passed by, leading a tray of customers. It was Quinn. Ethan's eyes lit up. "Hey Quinn!" he called out. She turned, looking confused. "Yeah. Go over the handover process with Todd. You're the new manager now." Quinn froze. Todd barely managed to keep a straight face. "Ethan really just does whatever he wants, huh?" "Wait, what?" Quinn stammered. "Yeah, you're in charge now. Here." Ethan grabbed a napkin, scribbled his number on it, and handed it to her. "Call me if something major happens. Otherwise, just run the place however you see fit. I don't care if it makes money, just don't let it go under." Quinn took the napkin, still looking stunned and unable to figure out what to say next. Chapter 72, Reckoning. Todd, Quinn, and Jade stood at the entrance of the gym, watching Ethan leave with a noticeable spring in his step. He seemed to be in a good mood. Todd tilted his head thoughtfully. "Ethan's unbelievable. Who throws out $2 million just like that?" Hearing Todd's comment, Quinn made a silent vow. "I'll make sure to handle this gym better than ever for him," she resolved internally. Jade, on the other hand, stood quietly, a swirl of emotions she couldn't quite pin down settling deep within her chest. By the time Ethan returned to the villa, it was already past 11. Pulling out his phone, he was surprised to see that Lila hadn't called him. That girl, she's oddly considerate, never one to check in unnecessarily, he mused with a grin. But there was one text waiting for him, from her. "Hey, went to school on my own this morning. When you get back, stay put and rest, all right?" Ethan chuckled at her words, but they served as a timely reminder. "Oh right, I have combat training class this afternoon." Excitement surged in his chest. Ever since the morning's performance test, he had been itching to get back into action. Tossing his things together, he prepared to head to campus. For the first time in ages, Ethan felt a burning eagerness for class. Heading to the garage, he stared at the sleek Predator X, but ultimately shook his head. "Too flashy. Better keep things low-key," he muttered to himself. Taking the bus instead, Ethan endured a nearly 2-hour trip to school. By the time he arrived at the east entrance, His phone clocked in just 3 minutes before class began. Today's session was across campus at the West Entrance's training hall. Ethan gulped nervously. Memories of Celeste Hawthorne flashed vividly through his mind. Her strict attitude towards late students could turn even grown men to jelly. "Not happening today," he muttered, breaking into a sprint. A snarky voice from a fellow student nearly stopped him in his tracks as he passed. "What's the rush, man? Chasing your next life." "Chasing my life? Try managing yours." Ethan thought grimly but didn't waste time responding aloud. He tore ahead, leaving the stunned student behind. The east gate to the west gate wasn't exactly a straight shot. The school's large central lake meant Ethan had to circle halfway around it, adding an extra distance to his dash. Plus, the training hall was on the 3rd floor of the building. Huffing and puffing, he launched himself into the room just as the class bell rang. Ethan silently thanked his morning stamina test for preparing him. But even so, his lungs burned, and sweat poured off him as he leaned against the doorway to catch his breath. "Pfft! Look who made it, our resident slacker." A nasal voice jeered from the back of the room. "Heard you were laid up in the hospital. Feeling strong enough now?" Ignoring the insult, Ethan wiped his brow and took his place. His calm composure, however, didn't seem to sit well with Celeste Hawthorne, who was watching from her position. Her lips pursed in displeasure, clearly unimpressed by his refusal to engage with the heckling. Her eyes narrowed. "That's it? If it were me, I'd send anyone talking like that straight to the infirmary," her expression seemed to say. Standing in the center of the training room, Celeste's voice broke through the low hum of the room. "All right, everyone's here. The usual warm-up to start, followed by open sparring. Then, as always, I'll offer individual guidance." A collective groan filled the room. "What? Again? Didn't you guide us last class?" "Yeah, you used to only give guidance once a month. Are we starting a new weekly schedule or something?" The scathing glare Celeste shot them was enough to shut everyone up. Like cockroaches scattering under a spotlight, the students immediately split up, diligently diving into their warm-up exercises. Ethan picked a corner of the training hall and slumped down into a seat. Warming up was the last thing on his mind. After a grueling workout at the gym earlier that morning, plus a mad long-distance sprint to class, he figured he'd done more than enough to get his blood pumping. From his quiet corner, Ethan surveyed his bustling classmates. On the far side of the room, Celeste Hawthorne was doing her warm-up stretches near the wall. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to really observe her. It hit him then. This was the woman who, for 2 years straight, had topped the campus' most beautiful rankings, until Lila arrived, of course. Her figure was flawless, tight, athletic, yet feminine in all the right places. She had the kind of face that could launch 1,000 bad decisions, and her toned waist emphasized her lean, graceful build. But it was her legs, long, straight, smooth, and almost unnaturally perfect, that really caught Ethan's eye. "What on earth does she eat to look like that?" he thought absently. He watched her move with fluidity and grace, every stretch highlighting her incredible flexibility. At one point, as she bent particularly low, Ethan found his thoughts drifting. Then her eyes locked onto his. A chill ran down Ethan's spine as a wave of palpable hostility radiated from her direction. Instinctively, he broke eye contact, pretending to focus on the blank wall behind her. "Geez," he thought, his pulse still racing. "How are her senses that sharp? All I did was look at her for a few seconds." As Ethan diverted his gaze, an annoying and eerily familiar voice broke his train of thought. "Ethan, care to spar with me? I've been working on some new moves and thought I'd give you some guidance since you've been out of class for a bit." The voice belonged to Trent, one of Ethan's least favorite people. He had served as an assistant instructor under the previous coach before Celeste had taken over, and back then, his favorite pastime had been making Ethan's life miserable. Hearing the challenge, Ethan's expression darkened briefly before returning to his usual neutral smile. "Oh, sure. If it's a beating you're after, I'll be happy to oblige. It's about time I settled this anyway." His thoughts were laced with venom. The anger from past humiliations flared in Ethan's chest as he remembered Trent's past torment. Once, during their first year, Trent had goaded Ethan into a fight in front of the entire class. The result? Ethan was battered to the ground, his face stomped on, forced to surrender amidst jeers and laughter. For weeks afterward, the shame had kept Ethan from showing his face in class. Since Celeste's arrival, Trent had toned down his antics. After all, she had literally hospitalized their previous coach during her takeover. Still, Trent had never stopped searching for opportunities to pick on Ethan. If you're so eager, I'm more than happy to take out the trash, Ethan thought grimly, a flash of menace flickering in his eyes. Despite his resolve, he kept his tone light. Nah, let's not. You know I'm not much of a match for you, he said with a sheepish smile. His refusal disappointed the classmates who'd been watching, anticipating a spectacle. But Ethan had a rule on his side. One of the first decrees Celeste had implemented in her classes was that no one could be forced into a sparring match. This alone had been enough to make her Ethan's hero. Still, Trent felt unease creep into his chest as he looked into Ethan's eyes. For a moment, he thought he saw something sharp, dangerous even. But when he looked again, Ethan's expression was as relaxed and unassuming as ever. Shaking off the momentary doubt, Trent continued to push. Hey, it's just practice. No hard feelings either way, right? If you're rusty, I can help get you back on track. I won't go too hard, promise. Before Ethan could respond, another voice chimed in, a shrill, grating sound that he instantly recognized as Liam, Trent's loyal lackey. Yeah, Ethan, come on. It's been days since you've had a proper workout. Do you really want Celeste herself to have to baby you? Liam added with an oily chuckle, hoping to rile Ethan up. The sight of Liam, a wiry guy who always hovered around Trent like an overeager puppy, made Ethan's blood boil. He could hardly count the number of times Liam had piled onto Trent's harassment. Together, the pair had been a thorn in his side since his first day on campus. Just as Ethan was preparing another polite refusal, a group of 5 other students strode over, interrupting the tension. How about we keep things fair? One of them suggested with a smirk. If you're dead set on sparring, Trent, we're happy to jump in too. It's only fair someone's got Ethan's back, right? Chapter 73, No Holding Back. The people who just stepped out were none other than Ethan's college dorm mates. Seeing them, a warmth spread through his chest. They knew full well they weren't a match for Trent, yet they still showed up to back him up. And who the hell do you 5 think you are? Trent's just trying to give Ethan some guidance. Why don't you all go chill somewhere else? Ethan had been worried that Trent would actually clash with his 5 dorm mates, because if that happened, there'd be no easy way to deal with the guy afterward. But right in cue, Liam stepped forward and ran his mouth. Liam's right. None of us can beat Trent, so no matter who steps up, we'll just lose. I might as well be his punching bag and help him get some practice in. Ethan spoke without hesitation. Ethan. Rowan grabbed his arm. It's fine, big guy. Ethan interrupted. Trent said he just wants to give me some guidance, right? Yeah, we'll keep it light. Trent put on a magnanimous act, but a glint of malice flashed through his eyes. You little punk. I'm going to humiliate you again. Damn it, both your ex and your current girl. What a waste on someone like you. If Ethan knew that this whole grudge started because of that, he honestly wouldn't know whether to be amused or just plain amused. Or really amused. The training hall buzzed with excitement. Once the crowd realized Ethan and Trent were about to throw down, they quickly backed up, clearing the center of the floor for the fight. At that moment, Celeste Hawthorne walked over, her expression unreadable. She looked at Ethan and spoke in a low voice. You're aware that in-class sparring has strict regulations. If someone sustains serious injuries or worse, the consequences remain the same, right? Ethan nodded. I know. Good. She turned to leave but, as she passed him, she muttered something under her breath. Ethan froze. He stood there, staring at her back, completely dumbfounded. Celeste didn't acknowledge his reaction. She walked to the edge of the training hall and turned around, her usual icy demeanor firmly in place. What are you standing there for? Trent snapped. Ethan exhaled sharply and smirked. All right then, why don't we go all out? Otherwise you won't enjoy yourself, right? It's just a fight. If we get banged up, we'll just heal up at home. We're young, nothing to be afraid of. Trent's eyes gleamed with excitement. That's exactly what I wanted. Even if you didn't suggest it, I wasn't planning to hold back anyway. Fine by me. Let's do this for real. He grinned before turning to the crowd. You all heard him, right? Ethan agreed to an all-out match. If anything happens, don't blame me. Ethan, are you insane? Dude, don't mess around. Come on, don't do this. His dorm mates were in shock, voices overlapping as they tried to dissuade him. But Ethan? He simply clasped his hands together and gave Trent a respectful bow. Trent hesitated for a second before following suit. As he bowed, Ethan caught sight of the opening, a sharp grin curling at his lips. Normally, in-class sparring didn't require formal gestures. There was an official global regulation for competitive combat courses. If both fighters willingly performed a ceremonial bow before a match, it was no longer just a spar, it became an official fight. As long as neither party surrendered, there were no restrictions on injuries, even death. However, if one fighter conceded or was knocked out, any further attacks would still be considered a criminal offense. The moment Ethan and Trent completed the ceremonial bow, the entire training hall fell silent. Are they actually serious? Everyone knew what that gesture meant. After a brief silence, the hall erupted into hushed murmurs. Ethan? Is he trying to get himself killed? Has he lost his mind? Who knows? Either way, this is straight-up suicide. Who do you think's gonna win? Is that even a question? Obviously, it's Trent. No one had expected Ethan to initiate the bow first. He had just cut off his own escape route. Amidst the chatter, Celeste's lips curled into the faintest smile, but with all eyes glued to the fighters in the center, no one noticed. If they had, they would have been utterly dumbfounded. The Ice Queen, smiling? Meanwhile, Trent's eyes gleamed with ruthless intent. Since you're so eager to get wrecked, I won't hold back. If I don't put you in the hospital for a month, I'll livestream myself eating dirt. Of course, he only said that in his head. If he had spoken out loud, Ethan would have made him sign a written agreement on the spot. And then, well, Trent would have had to follow through. Let's get started, Trent said. With a sudden burst of speed, he charged at Ethan. To the spectators, he was lightning fast. Many of them clenched their fists, nervous for Ethan. But in Ethan's eyes, Trent was moving like a sluggish snail. He hadn't fully realized it yet, but his enhanced soul power had drastically sharpened his perception. As Trent closed in, he threw a punch straight at Ethan's chest. Earlier, Rowan had warned him about Trent's latest strength test results. 115 kilograms punch force, 235 kilograms leg strength, and a 152 kilograms squat. Ethan analyzed Trent's movements in an instant. His stance was riddled with openings. He could think of at least a dozen ways to knock him down. But if Trent went down too quickly and refused to get back up, where was the fun in that? Instead, Ethan simply pivoted left, brushing past Trent's right side with ease. Trent reacted quickly, swinging his arm in a desperate attempt to catch Ethan. Too bad. Ethan sidestepped effortlessly, now positioned behind him. Using the momentum of his turn, he drove his elbow into the center of Trent's back. Thud. A dull, heavy sound echoed through the hall. Trent staggered forward, his whole body seizing up. For a brief moment, just a fraction of a second, his blood circulation stalled. Then, under the sudden pressure from his heart, everything surged violently. That one hit had already caused serious internal damage. Ethan hadn't held back. A strike to the spine was no joke. If Trent wasn't one of the physically strongest in the class, he might have blacked out on the spot. Still, his heart had taken a direct hit. Even if he recovered, he could probably kiss any intense physical activity goodbye. Just as he was struggling to regain his balance, Ethan moved again. A sharp gust of wind cut through the air. Trent, still reeling from his momentary cardiac arrest, was too dazed to react. Then, smack, a loud, crisp slap landed across his face, sending him stumbling sideways. Before he could collapse, Ethan was already on the move. Smack, another slap, this time to his left cheek, straightening him back up. Ethan wasn't done yet. He wasn't about to let Trent hit the floor, not until he had landed the finishing blow. Chapter 74, The Fall of a King. At this point, how could Trent not realize that Ethan had been toying with him? In fact, he even suspected that Ethan had been playing the fool for over a year, just for this moment to finally turn the tables. But that didn't make sense. Last time, he had literally stomped Ethan's head into the ground. The guy hadn't even been able to fight back. Trent barely got a word out. He had already made up his mind to surrender. Thud. Ethan's fist shot forward, drilling into Trent's stomach with pinpoint force. The words died in Trent's throat, swallowed by the shock and pain. His body folded like a shrimp, bending sharply at the waist. Just as he doubled over, Ethan's knee came rocketing up. Boom! The impact sent Trent airborne. Before he could even start to fall, Ethan followed up with a powerful kick to his chest. Thud. A deep, gut-wrenching sound echoed through the hall as Trent's body was launched backward. He crashed hard, tumbling nearly 6 meters before coming to a stop. Blood spewed from his mouth as he struggled for a moment, then stopped moving altogether. Ethan dusted off his hands, admiring his final kick. Perfect form. The entire hall was dead silent. No one had expected the fight to end so quickly. And no one, absolutely no one, had expected Trent to be the one lying on the floor, utterly defenseless. When had Ethan become this strong? Everyone in the room had some combat training. They could tell, just from that last kick alone, that Ethan had easily generated over 300 kilograms of force. The thought sent a chill down their spines. That kind of power was on par with professional fighters. If Trent had really taken that full-force kick, who knew how bad his injuries were? Just thinking about it was terrifying. Ethan, however, was feeling incredibly satisfied. Trent had always been considered the second-best fighter in their class, right behind Celeste. But now, that reputation had just been obliterated. Flat on his back, completely motionless, Trent was no longer a king. Ethan turned to the stunned crowd, his face a picture of innocence. So, does anyone know where to find a doctor? I swear I didn't mean to. I had no idea he was this weak. As if on cue, 2 school medics pushed through the crowd, heading straight for the fallen Trent. Every combat class had medics stationed outside, just in case of emergencies. These 2 had been watching the fight from the doorway, and the moment Trent collapsed, they had sprinted in with a stretcher. One of them, a guy with glasses, walked past Ethan and muttered, "Damn, that was brutal. I'd say he's going to be bedridden for at least 6 months." Ethan scratched the back of his head sheepishly. That was an accident. I swear. Who knew he was this fragile? The medic gave him a thumbs up. Dude, if you're not acting, then Hollywood's missing out big time. Ethan could only laugh awkwardly as they carried Trent away. His 5 dorm mates immediately swarmed him. Ethan, that was insane. Damn, man. Playing dumb for so long, just to strike when it mattered? Absolute genius. That last kick, brutal. Just brutal. The other students crowded around, chatting excitedly. Ethan shrugged. I mean, maybe he just had food poisoning last night? Probably wasn't feeling his best today. Everyone shot him a look of pure disbelief. Before they could call him out on his nonsense, Celeste's cold voice cut through the air. All right, everyone, get back to training. Ethan, stay after class. The crowd instantly fell silent. All eyes turned to Ethan, who could only sigh. Looks like he wasn't getting out of this one. Everyone's gaze on Ethan had a mix of sympathy and amusement. He just got called out by the Ice Queen. Serves you right for acting all innocent. What, you think we're blind? Good luck, buddy. Even his dorm mates patted him on the shoulder one by one. Stay strong, man. Ethan was speechless. Were they really enjoying his misery? Damn it. Hopefully it wouldn't be too bad. Then he remembered Celeste's whispered words before the fight. Maybe she wouldn't be too hard on him? Still, something didn't add up. Hadn't she just stood there, watching the fight unfold? What if Trent had actually beaten him half to death? Did she not care? Or did she already know he had gotten stronger? He had heard before that top-tier fighters could gauge someone's strength just from their aura alone. Had Celeste reached that level? No way. She wasn't much older than him. That would be insane. 1,000 questions swirled in his mind before his thoughts landed back on what she had whispered. After the bow, don't hold back. That short phrase had made everything click. That was why he initiated the ceremonial bow first. He knew that once he did, Trent wouldn't pass up the chance to humiliate him and would follow suit. And Celeste had probably predicted that too. That's why she had warned him. Now, as she went around coaching other students, Ethan took another long look at her. Who was she, really? With her skills, there was no way she was supposed to be here in an ordinary university. Pushing those thoughts aside, Ethan decided to look for a sparring partner. But before he could even ask, the other students shook their heads, practically backing away. No one wanted to be the next Trent, especially after hearing the medic's passing remark. Well, at least he's still breathing. What did that even mean? That Trent had almost died? At that moment, Ethan officially became the last person anyone wanted to mess with. Even scarier than the Ice Queen herself. Celeste might break your body, leave you bruised, and push you to your limits. But Ethan? That guy would smile at you like a friend, then send you straight to a hospital bed. 2 years without fighting, and the moment he did, he left someone barely conscious. Yep. Best to stay far away from him. That was the collective decision of everyone in the room. Ethan, meanwhile, was starting to feel bored. So this was the loneliness of being too strong? Left with nothing else to do, he turned his attention to the training equipment. He started testing his strength on the machines one after another, breaking records as he went. Alarms blared. Machines groaned under the strain. His classmates, who had been trying to ignore him, now stared in horrified silence. Yup, time to cherish their lives and stay the hell away from Ethan. Not far away, Celeste watched with bright, interested eyes. She was eager to finish the lesson and talk to him. But if Ethan had known he was once again drawing her attention, he'd probably be cursing himself. The entire class passed with a strange mix of anxiety and relief. For the first time, Celeste didn't call anyone out for one-on-one sparring. And Ethan? His initial excitement had slowly turned into full-blown panic. Because the whole afternoon, Celeste had been staring at him. Unwavering, unrelenting. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and slipped away to a corner where she couldn't see him. That gaze of hers was lethal. As soon as the bell rang, he was going to blend into the crowd and escape. Chapter 75, The Ninth Division. As soon as the class ended, the entire room erupted into motion. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Everyone rushed toward the exit. Stop! Celeste's cold, slightly irritated voice rang out. The crowd froze mid-step, turning back in confusion. Following her gaze, they finally saw what she meant. Ethan was hunched over, desperately trying to squeeze his way through the mass of bodies. Even with his ridiculous strength, there was no way to bulldoze through over 100 people in such tight space. And now everyone knew exactly who Celeste was talking to. No one said a word. Then, whether it was one person or several acting together, someone gave a hard shove. Ethan was immediately pushed out of the crowd, stumbling into the open. As he turned back, helpless, his classmates simply looked at him with a silent and collectively pitiful expressions. Then, in a wave of motion, they all bolted from the training hall. Someone even took the time to close the door behind them. Ethan slowly turned around, awkwardly facing Celeste. Miss Celeste," he stammered. "So, it's dinner time, right? How about we, talk over a meal?" As he spoke, Celeste steadily walked toward him. Her face was unreadable. Ethan, however, was very aware of how many times he had witnessed her absolutely destroy their classmates in sparring sessions. Tension gripped his entire body. She stopped just half a meter away. For a moment, she simply stared at him. Then, to his utter disbelief, her lips curved slightly. "You're buying." "Huh." Ethan's brain spun. Celeste had already opened the door and walked out before he managed to react. He quickly followed, trailing behind as they left the building in silence. The atmosphere felt unbearably awkward, so Ethan finally broke it. "So, where are we going?" "You're paying. You decide." Celeste didn't even turn her head. There's this burger joint by the West Gate. They make a good double cheeseburger." Celeste stopped in her tracks and looked back at him. Ethan blinked. He realized his mistake immediately. She was the most sought-after girl on campus. Guys would probably line up around the lake just to take her to a fancy restaurant. And what did he suggest? A greasy burger joint? Yeah. Not his best moment. Or, we could get some seafood? He blurted, his brain scrambling for an alternative. To his surprise, the Ice Queen actually smirked. "I have to say, your taste is incredibly low. Seriously, how did you even manage to date Lila?" Ethan opened his mouth to protest. But seafood sound good," Celeste continued. "Haven't had them in a while. Let's go." And just like that, she wasn't walking ahead of him anymore. Instead, she walked beside him, shoulder to shoulder. Ethan blinked. Wait, was this the second time he had seen her smile? And it actually looked nice on her. Of course, he wasn't dumb enough to say that out loud. As they walked together, students around them whispered frantically. Within minutes, the news spread like wildfire. The Ice Queen was leaving campus with a guy. And not just any exit. The West Gate. Everyone knew what the West Gate was famous for. Hotels, motels, a whole street lined with them. So when Celeste suddenly spoke, Ethan wasn't surprised at all. "Shouldn't you check in with your girlfriend first?" she asked. He had already noticed the stares. Even some teachers were giving them strange looks. Apparently, Celeste's reputation on campus was that powerful. Ethan cleared his throat. I'll just ask Lila if she's eaten yet." Ethan wasn't usually the paranoid type, But he really didn't want the situation to be misunderstood by Lila. Things were finally progressing between them. He couldn't afford any unnecessary drama. Good timing, Celeste said casually. I was planning to find Lila anyway. Quite the surprise running into both of you like this. If she's free, have her join us. Ethan wasn't really paying attention to her wording. Under Celeste's half-smirking gaze, he quickly pulled out his phone and dialed Lila's number. Hey, Lila, have you eaten yet? Not yet. I was actually heading home to eat with you. I'm still on campus. Senior Celeste invited us to dinner. There was a brief pause. Celeste invited us to dinner? Lila sounded genuinely surprised. All right, where are you? I'll come meet you. After giving her the location, Ethan hung up. Lila didn't take long to arrive. And just like that, the three of them walked out of the school gates together. The scene they created? Absolutely eye-catching. Ethan, flanked by two of the most stunning girls on campus, was now the center of attention. They found a casual seafood restaurant and took a table near the window. This time of the day, the place wasn't crowded. Soon, their table was filled with plates of fresh oysters, grilled fish, and crispy calamari. Celeste, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. Do you know why I invited you here? She didn't bother with small talk. Ethan and Lila exchanged glances. Then they both shook their heads. Seeing how stiff they looked, Celeste suddenly smiled. A genuine, beautiful smile. Relax, you two. That only made them more tense. Celeste never smiled. It was part of the reason she was called the Ice Queen. And according to rumors, anyone who had ever seen her smile hadn't ended up in a good place. Because when Celeste smiled, it usually meant she was about to wreck someone. Actually, she continued, I'm not really a student here. That got Lila's attention. Wait, but I heard you transferred in later. Where were you before? Instead of answering, Celeste asked, Have you heard of recruitment officers? Ethan blinked. Recruitment officers? Sounded like military recruiters? Lila, on the other hand, looked genuinely surprised. Wait, you're our school's recruitment officer? Ethan turned to her. Okay, hold up. What's a recruitment officer? Lila hesitated, then glanced at Celeste. Surprisingly, Celeste, who had been nothing but cold and distant in class, now had the demeanor of a friendly older sister. She nodded. Go ahead. It's not really a secret. Getting her approval, Lila explained. Recruitment officers were basically military recruiters, but with a twist. Instead of enlisting for the army, they scouted for a special government division. The 9th Division. Lila didn't go into detail, only saying that it was a classified national organization. Every major university had at least one recruitment officer stationed to identify and recruit promising talent. When she finished, Celeste studied her closely. Sounds like you know quite a bit about them. Has someone tried to recruit you before? Lila nodded. Yeah. Before I transferred here, someone approached me. But I have a Silverwood surname. That last part sounded cryptic to Ethan. What does having that surname have to do with anything? Celeste, however, immediately understood. She gave a small nod, though a hint of regret crossed her face. Then she turned to Ethan. So, are you interested in joining the 9th Division? Ethan stared at her, baffled. The 9th Division? What the hell even is that? Why do you guys talk about it like it's some top secret? Chapter 76. Keeping them apart. Ethan had no idea what was going on. Just as he spoke, Lila blurted out, Celeste, you've got to be kidding, right? There's no way they'd recruit him into the 9th Division. As soon as the words left her mouth, she felt a little guilty. That was a bit too harsh, wasn't it? She peeked at Ethan, stuck out her tongue, and made a silly face, hoping to lighten the mood. Celeste, however, just laughed. Lila, you really don't know Ethan, do you? He had quite the moment today. Huh? What happened? Tell me. Lila's curiosity was instantly piqued. Celeste shrugged. Nothing much. He just wrecked the guy I was considering for the spot. Lila's eyes widened. Wait, seriously? You? That's strong. She turned to Ethan, her face full of disbelief. I thought they called you a weakling. Ethan groaned internally. Can't this girl ever just hold back? Give me some dignity, please. Lila, clearly amused by his reaction, covered her mouth as she giggled uncontrollably. So, Celeste, how bad did he get beat? To be honest, she felt proud. She didn't know how Ethan had suddenly become so strong. But that didn't matter. If he was getting stronger, maybe, a little idea was starting to take root in her mind. Celeste smirked. Oh, nothing serious. Just 5 broken ribs, 6 missing teeth, a severe concussion. No idea when he'll wake up. Oh, and his heart took some damage, so no more intense exercise. In fact, let's just say, certain bedroom activities are off the table for him now. Lila had been staring at Ethan in shock, even squeezing his arm as if to check if he was actually that strong. But Celeste's last comment, well, that had her blushing furiously. Ethan, on the other hand, was just as shocked. He hadn't expected to do that much damage. Still, regret? Not a chance. That guy had it coming. He was lucky Ethan hadn't finished the job. But Celeste cracking jokes like that? That threw him off. He gave her a suspicious once-over. Did she have a twin I didn't know about? Noticing his gaze, Celeste casually added, Don't look at me like that. Then, in full view of everyone, she grabbed Lila's hand and said, Lila, even if you can't join the 9th Division, we should still stay in touch. Come hang out with me sometime. Ethan stiffened, goosebumps crawling over his skin. Wait, what? Even the fork in his hand trembled before slipping through his fingers and hitting the table. For some reason, his brain conjured up a smut-filled scene, 2 stunning women, wrapped up in nothing but silk sheets, their smooth skins glistening with sweat as they explored each other's bodies, their soft moans filling the air. Lila subtly pulled her hand back, her cheeks still flushed. Yeah, sure. I'll, hang out with you sometime. She stole a glance at Ethan, who looked like he'd just been flash-frozen. What the hell? Not only did she agree, but she looked shy about it. No way. Ethan shot to his feet. Ethan's outburst was loud. Loud enough that half the street probably heard him. Realizing he just made a scene, he quickly sat back down, feeling a little embarrassed. To cover up, he grabbed Lila's hand and under Celeste's amused gaze, blurted out, can I, join you guys when you hang out? Wait. No, what I meant was you can't hang out together. Celeste rolled her eyes, while Lila covered her mouth, giggling. Why not, Effie? Are you jealous? You can join us if you really want. Ethan wasn't falling for it. That scheming little look in Celeste's her eyes was a dead giveaway. She was setting a trap. He straightened up and answered with full seriousness. Assistant Instructor Hawthorne is a very busy person. She doesn't have time to mess around with you. Right, Celeste? Celeste didn't even bother replying. She just let out a soft hum, clearly unimpressed. Dinner went on after that, but the mood had shifted. Conversation turned awkward, mostly because Ethan spent the rest of the meal keeping a wary eye on Celeste, making sure she wasn't getting any funny ideas about Lila. Eventually, though, Celeste cut to the point. So, about the 9th Division. Have you thought it over? I don't even know what you guys do. And more importantly, what's in it for me? Celeste smirked. Ask Lila when you get home. Once you've made up your mind, let me know. And just like that, her usual icy demeanor returned. She stood up, said her goodbyes to Lila, reminded her again to definitely hang out sometime, then left. For some reason, as soon as she was gone, Ethan felt like a huge weight had been lifted off his chest. He trusted Lila, sure, but Celeste was a wild card. If she kept hanging around, what if she converted his precious little Lila? Worse, what if Lila wanted to be converted? Nope, not happening. Keeping them apart was now a priority. At least they hadn't exchanged numbers. After Celeste left, Ethan and Lila ate a little more. Ethan was stuffed, he hadn't eaten all day. Morning had been spent working out, followed by a brutal commute to school, then an afternoon of combat training. Even if he hadn't moved around much, going a whole day without food had taken its toll. Now that he had money, he could finally eat like a king. Honestly, he almost felt like ordering extra food just to throw it away, just because he could. His past self never had this luxury. Back then, it was instant noodles if he was lucky. Sometimes he just went hungry. As they ate, Ethan told Lila everything that had happened earlier. He even pulled out the bracelet, showing it off like some rare treasure. Lila was beyond thrilled. She was so touched she nearly teared up. After dinner, the two of them made their way back near the villa. But before heading home, Ethan decided to give his future lady a tour of the gym he'd just bought. Back at the gym, Todd was gone, but Quinn was handling things surprisingly well. Everything was running smoothly. At night, the gym was much busier. With Jade gone, Quinn had to manage the entire place herself, acting as both the manager and the front desk staff. She was completely swamped. Ethan told her to put up a hiring notice. 2 new employees would take over her and Jade's old responsibilities, so she could focus solely on managing the gym. If any problems popped up, she'd just call him. After that, he dragged Lila, who was still busy checking everything out, back to the villa. Ethereal was about to go online. Chapter 77. Overpowered doesn't even cover it. The moment Ethan logged into the game, a video call from Lila popped up. Already? He smirked. We just separated a few minutes ago, and she's already missing me? Guess my charm really is something else. Feeling pleased with himself, he answered. Check the leaderboard, Lila said immediately. The pet rankings. What's up? Ethan asked, already skeptical. The pet system hadn't even been unlocked yet. Nobody should have a pet right now. Just look, Lila insisted. Giving in, Ethan opened the leaderboard and navigated to the pet category. And sure enough, there was one pet listed. The only one. Standing there all alone at the top. Pet name, Mergenair. Species, Dragonkin. Description. A powerful dragon with mastery over poison and water magic. Owner, Moonbeam. Ethan blinked. That name looked familiar. Then he read the description and bam, it clicked. Wasn't this the Winter Queen's pet? Seeing the owner's name, Ethan froze for a second before excitement surged through him. Lila! How the hell did you get her? In Ethereal, it was possible to tame wild creatures, but nobody had ever managed to tame a boss before. Once the pet system opened, 99.99% of players would get their pets by purchasing an egg and paying a ridiculous amount to have it hatched by a pet trainer. But Lila? She somehow got a top-tier boss to pledge loyalty to her. Ethan was ecstatic. Through the video, he saw the little dragon perched on Lila's shoulder, chubby, deep green, and looking adorably smug. I have no idea, Lila said, equally amazed. I logged in, and the system just told me I had a pet. Ethan finally understood why the boss hadn't shown up at Larson Basin yesterday. It was off finding its new master instead. The real question was why. What kind of ability did Lila have to make a monstrous creature willingly swear loyalty? First, there was that pendant from the underworld that bound itself to her. Now, the Winter Queen's pet had done the same. Was there some connection between them? Ethan was starting to think that maybe Lila was the real chosen one here. And him? He was just some guy. For a moment, he didn't even know what to say. Eventually, he just told Lila to start leveling up with her new pet. Sure, it'd slow down her experience gain, but once it grew stronger, it'd be a massive asset, strong enough to help her fight enemies way beyond her level. Lila, of course, didn't seem too worried about her level. I don't mind leveling slowly. It's nice having a little pet to keep me company. She sounded casual, but Ethan didn't feel the same way. No way he was letting her stay low-leveled. Especially not when he had a legendary weapon meant just for her. They were supposed to fight side by side, carve out a legend together, make every single player in the game jealous. If he wanted Lila to level up faster, there was only one solution, getting her a unique growth ability. Ethan already knew where to find one. Problem was, that place was currently out of his reach. Walking in now would be the same as signing his own death warrant. But as for finding a low-tier growth ability, that wasn't a problem. Lila getting this pet had Ethan in such a good mood that even his sin value being maxed out didn't bother him anymore. Sin value could be cleared eventually. Speaking of which, he quickly reminded Lila not to let her pet die. If its loyalty dropped too low, things could get ugly. Pets with low loyalty didn't just disobey orders. They could turn on their own masters. And that was a mess neither of them wanted to deal with. In his previous life, Ethan had seen plenty of players get killed when their pets suddenly turned on them. But Lila? She didn't seem worried at all. It's fine, she said casually. Her loyalty stat doesn't have a number. It just says, cannot decrease. Ethan's jaw nearly hit the floor. He'd never heard of that before. Regression was really messing with his understanding of the game. Since Lila didn't need him worrying about her, Ethan said his goodbyes. He had his own problem to deal with, washing away his sin value. In Ethereal, simply staying online gradually reduced sin value over time. But at max sin value? That would take forever. He didn't even want to think about how long it'd take to clear it naturally. Farming monsters was a much faster option. Speaking of farming, he suddenly thought of a place where monsters dropped mutated cores, an item that boosted pet growth. Excited, he called Lila again. She picked up instantly. Effie, again? We just hung up. I know, but listen. Don't level up your pet yet. Put her away and focus on getting to level 15 first. I'm heading out to clear my red name, and while I'm at it, I'll see if I can farm some mutated cores. If I get some, it'll boost her growth before she levels up, making her even stronger. Lila considered this for a moment. Alright, but her growth stat already says 50 max. Can it even go higher? What? Ethan froze. Yeah, it says 50 max, Lila confirmed. Forget everything I just said. Go ahead and level her up? Ethan sighed, feeling completely defeated. In his previous life, he'd heard that the highest possible growth stat for a pet was 50. It worked similarly to a player's star growth system. Every time a pet leveled up, all its attributes would increase according to its growth stat. That meant Lila's pet, this absurd growth 50 freak, would gain 50 points in every single stat per level up. For context, the strongest pet in the previous timeline, the number 1 ranked pet in the entire game, had a growth stat of 35. 50 was beyond insane. The higher her level got, the bigger the gap between her and every other pet in existence. That's why most players, upon obtaining a pet, didn't rush to level it up right away. Instead, they focused on increasing its growth potential first. After all, each player could only ever have one pet for life. Even if a pet betrayed its master, the player couldn't obtain a new one. The only solution: never summon it again and try to restore its loyalty, an obscenely expensive process involving a high-tier pet trainer. Losing a pet meant losing a huge combat advantage. After ending the call, Ethan set off toward Ashen Gorge. It was a level 20 to 30 monster zone, perfect for grinding and lowering his sin value. The moment he stepped inside, the name made perfect sense. The entire landscape was cast in shadow. Unlike the Plaguewood Forest, where darkness came from an eerie atmosphere, Ashen Gorge was dim because of the towering trees. Their thick, interwoven branches completely blocked out the sunlight. Yet despite the lack of light, the gorge was lush, vibrant greenery, rare flowers, and exotic herbs filled every corner. Chapter 78. The Hunter's Gamble. In a short while, players who had learned herbalism would flood this area. After gathering herbs, they would supply alchemists, who in turn crafted potions, elixirs, and tonics. Most alchemists preferred joining a guild rather than working for a shop. Guilds ensured a steady demand for their products, while shops depended on foot traffic, something that could be unreliable if the location wasn't ideal. Pure crafting professions weren't as unprofitable as many assumed. In fact, dedicated artisans could earn more than an average job in the real world. In his past life, Ethan had been a miner. By all logic, his life shouldn't have been so miserable. Most miners partnered with guilds to excavate resource-rich sites, securing stable income. Ethan, however, had spent years working alone, digging through abandoned mines for rare crystals, always guided by quest hints. The problem? Those crystals were buried deep, requiring him to practically tunnel through an entire mine just to retrieve one. As a result, he had been dirt poor. Instant noodles had been his staple, and there were days he couldn't even afford that. Now, standing at the edge of Ashen Gorge, Ethan reminded himself not to be fooled by its deceiving beauty. There was no safe zone here. Monsters could appear anywhere at any time, especially dire wolves, creatures known as prairie stalkers. These beasts possessed advanced stealth abilities, patrolled the entire map unpredictably, and every single one of them was elite-ranked. Countless players had died to their claws while attempting to gather materials in this area. Ethan had chosen this place for 2 reasons. First, the dense monster population made it ideal for farming sin value. Second, he wanted to hunt prairie stalkers in hopes of obtaining an advanced stealth skill book, something that could significantly raise his stealth level. Only by improving his stealth ability could he explore high-level zones that were currently beyond his reach. Not long after entering, Ethan suddenly felt a chill crawl up his spine. Something was lurking. A stealth unit. It wasn't another player, he was certain of that. The minimum level for monsters in Ashen Gorge was 20. Any rogue who tried sneaking in at this level would be exposed and instantly sent back to the revival point. That meant it could only be a prairie stalker. But drawing out a prairie stalker wasn't easy. At level 25, these elite beasts had a silent step ability that made them even harder to detect. They were 3 levels above Ethan. He had no way of spotting them first. The only solution: let it see him first. Transform, bear form. Ethan trusted his own defenses in this form. With over 5,500 HP, he wasn't worried about getting one shot. Plus, prairie stalkers lacked stun abilities. He didn't have to worry about being locked down. Once it revealed itself, he'd find a way to take it down. The moment Ethan shifted into bear form, his instincts proved right. A massive dire wolf lunged at him from the shadows. -89. Damn. That's a lot of damage, Ethan muttered, realizing just how strong a level 25 elite was. Without hesitation, he retaliated. Maul. His bear form stun ability landed clean, locking the beast in place for 3 seconds. Then, he immediately shifted into owl form, dropping Bramble Bind in front of it, layering 2 debuffs, Moonfire and Sunburst. 2 seconds had passed. Switching once more, Ethan took Panther form and slashed. -35. -44. -38. -44. -78. -44. 3 bleed effects ticked above its head. Just as the Prairie Stalker's stun wore off, Ethan took a step back, and the Prairie Stalker immediately lunged forward. But the moment it stepped down, its paw got caught in the bramble bind he had set earlier. The biggest weakness of beast-type monsters? They never tried to break free from control effects. With its legs tangled, the dire wolf couldn't turn around. Ethan wasted no time. He slipped behind it and slashed. Shred. Shred. -978. -1586. Massive damage numbers popped up. Even though Ethan's attacks hit hard, the Prairie Stalker had a massive 60,000 HP pool. There was no way he could kill it within Bramblebind's 8-second duration. In Panther form, his attacks consumed energy points. His max energy was 100, and even with its regeneration speed, he could only pull off 3 shred attacks in a row. Each shred cost 40 energy per strike. To keep up the assault, Ethan threw in a few basic claw attacks in between. By the time Bramble Bind wore off, he had landed 5 bleed effects, stacking up over 10,000 total damage. With the other debuffs, the Prairie Stalker had lost a full third of its health. Just before Bramble Bind expired, Ethan unleashed Typhoon in Panther form. A sudden gust launched the dire wolf backward, 6 meters away. Thanks to Typhoon's special effect, the beast was now slowed by 70% for 10 seconds. Ethan shifted into owl form, immediately reapplying Moonfire and Sunburst, extending their duration. With all his control skills on cooldown, Ethan rushed forward. Dodging the dire wolf's vicious swipes with nimble footwork, he only switched to bear form when an attack was unavoidable, soaking up the damage instead of taking direct hits. Before long, the dire wolf let out a dying wail and collapsed. Ethan glanced at the time. It had taken him a full minute to take down the elite. Then again, considering he had soloed a higher-level elite, he felt pretty damn proud. Most players at his level wouldn't even stand a chance. With that thought, Ethan pulled up his status window for the first time in a while. Not a druid. Race human. Level 22. Faction. Survivors. Bloodline. King of Elves. Divine. Attributes. Strength. 110, plus 20. Increases physical attack. Intelligence. 110, plus 20. Increases magic attack and mana pool. Agility 110, plus 20. Increases attack speed, movement speed, and energy regen. Stamina 110, plus 20. Increases defense.
Vitality 110, plus 20. Increases max HP.
Special stats. Omni plus 2 Mastery plus 4 Critical plus 4 Haste plus 3. Combat stats. Attack power 524 to 632. Defense 226 to 328. Health 2200. Free points 0. General skills. Basic appraisal, can inspect monsters up to 5 levels higher. Background. The peace-loving elven race has left an indelible mark on every recorded holy war. Though they cherish tranquility, their valor in battle is unparalleled. Ethan hadn't changed his gear much, but his weapon had been upgraded to level 30. With these stats, he was confident. His attack power was likely among the highest in the world. Grinning, he scooped up the copper coins dropped by the Prairie Stalker and started searching for his next prey. Chapter 79, The Gamble Pays Off. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. 2 days ago, Ethan had finally cleared his red name status, but the advanced stealth skill book had yet to drop. So, he had remained in Ashen Gorge for another 2 days. After countless Prairie Stalker kills, the very last one finally dropped. Skill book. Stealth, Advanced. Usable by Rogue, Druid, Panther form. Description: enhances the existing stealth skill upon use. 7 days. 3 entire levels gained. And only now did he finally get it. The drop rate was insanely low. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed the skill book and learned it immediately. Opening his skill panel, he checked his progress. Panther form. Stealth LV1. XP. 1/100. Finally, he could now level up his stealth. Mastering stealth mechanics had been the foundation of his rogue gameplay in his past life. With a high enough stealth level, he could drastically reduce the chances of being detected. Now that his red name status was cleared, Ethan pulled out a teleport stone and returned to Harmony City. The moment he arrived, Ethan was struck by the sheer difference from when he had first stepped foot here. The city was packed. At the teleportation hub, voices overlapped as players hawked their wares, many of them sitting on the ground, selling items at makeshift stalls. The 3 prime shop locations around the teleportation hub, they were all his. It was time to upgrade them into actual storefronts and officially kick off his business. With over 14,000 gold in his pocket, he had the capital to get things rolling and establish a reputation. Ethan left the teleport hub and made his way straight to the shop upgrade center. On the way, a heated argument caught his attention. He glanced over and saw a commotion in front of the Master Engineer Guild. One of the men, dressed in novice gear, had a badge pinned to his chest, the mark of an engineer apprentice. A single star on the badge indicated his rank. He looked to be in his mid-30s, but his weathered face made him seem older. The other man was a warrior with a greatsword strapped to his back. His small stature made the massive weapon look utterly ridiculous. A dwarf warrior, no doubt. This failure wasn't my fault, the engineer apprentice said quietly, head lowered. Oh, so it's my fault now, the dwarf warrior sneered, looking up at him. I swear, someone tampered with my materials before I started. Shut it. The dwarf waved him off dismissively. Our guild gave you so many resources, and you still made this garbage? You didn't even break even. And you still call yourself some hidden class master of demonic engineering? Ha! You're just a delusional fool. Then, without warning, the dwarf warrior jumped up and slapped the engineer apprentice across the face. Since they were inside the city, PvP attacks had no damage, but the apprentice's low-level status meant the impact still knocked him off balance. His crafting tools clattered to the ground. 3 days ago, the system had officially opened the main city access to crafting class players. The reason? Some starter zones had reached the 5,000 player threshold, triggering the requirement to allow life skill players into the city. For pure crafting players, hitting 75 proficiency points in their trade skill was enough to qualify for the transfer. This was a quality of life update for non-combatants. Currently, in the northern frontier region, most starter zones had already exceeded the 5,000 player mark. Only a handful of zones still hadn't met the requirement. Most crafting class players who made it into the main city immediately headed to their respective trade guilds, where they could use system-provided crafting rooms to work on their creations. Of course, these rooms required rent, nothing came for free. Most crafting players joined recruiting guilds to keep their income stable. Guilds provided the materials, and in return, these players crafted items and earned a steady wage. The engineer apprentice quietly stepped back, gathering his scattered tools. His eyes burned with hatred as he glared at the dwarf warrior. What the hell are you looking at? Get lost before I slap you again. The dwarf puffed up his chest, trying to look intimidating. His beady eyes widened aggressively, but to everyone else, it just looked nothing more than an angry turtle trying to act fierce. The engineer apprentice took a deep breath, turned around, and walked away in silence. Coward! The dwarf warrior spat in disgust. The crowd murmured. He didn't even fight back? Took a slap and just walked off. If that were me, I'd be calling the guards right now. Maybe he's just biding his time, Ethan commented casually, his eyes flashing with interest. The ones who endure the longest? They're usually the scariest when they finally strike back. Some players glanced at him, but most dismissed the remark. A few even scoffed. The commotion died down, and the crowd dispersed. Only Ethan remained, watching the engineer apprentice's retreating figure, deep in thought. Well, never thought I'd run into him this early, Ethan muttered under his breath. This apprentice was someone he knew, not as a friend, but as an enemy. In his past life, this man had been one of Zachary's most loyal lackeys. After Zachary secretly invested in Avalon Vanguard, seizing control of the guild, this engineer had joined him. From that point on, Avalon Vanguard became infamous for its bizarre engineered weapons, all thanks to this guy. Demonic counter shields, homing explosive bombs, enhanced jump boots, fragmentation magic rounds. The worst of them all? The counter shield. That thing had caused Ethan to go red-named more times than he could count. Could be used on yourself or given to others. The catch? Reflected damage didn't trigger system aggression rules. Ethan had no intention of fighting, yet enemies would activate the shield, baiting him into attacking. The system then flagged him as the aggressor, branding him with a gray name. A gray-named player in the open world? Free game for everyone. Suddenly, he was hunted by mobs of opportunists, many of them armed with enhanced jump boots. With no escape route, Ethan had been forced to fight back, killing the ones blocking his path. And just like that, he was a red name again. Eventually, Zachary's guild sent Shadowstrike after him, initiating an endless cycle of assassinations. And this apprentice? This nobody had been responsible for all of it. And that was only a fraction of his work. Later on, he even developed a demonic war machine, a giant mobile fortress that crushed entire enemy forces. During one of the biggest siege wars, this machine single-handedly wiped out an entire army of Dragonspire's elite players. And it all started with this pathetic, beaten-down apprentice, now walking away in disgrace. No paper on the big one. Ethan's lips curled into a smirk. Fate sure had a funny way of bringing people back together. Chapter 80, The Mad Engineer. Because his original in-game name was ridiculous, players in Avalon Vanguard had once given him a new title, The Mad Engineer. Right now, no paper on the big one had just been kicked out of another guild. He hadn't yet been discovered by Zachary, the man who, in his lowest moments, had extended a hand and shown him genuine appreciation. That moment of kindness had earned Zachary his absolute loyalty. It was that loyalty that later led to him designing weapons that slaughtered Dragonspire's top-ranked players, turning the tide of entire wars. By the end, he was known as nothing more than a traitor, reviled by thousands. Looking back, no paper on the big one wasn't inherently a bad person. He had just followed the wrong leader. A mad engineer, still in his apprentice phase. Is he worth investing in? Ethan murmured to himself. Back then, no paper on the big one had only succeeded because of Avalon Vanguard's resources. Zachary had thrown an endless supply of materials his way, allowing him to refine his craft and rise to power. That title, Mad Engineer, had once carried real weight. Right now, in terms of personal wealth, Ethan was likely one of the richest players in the Northern Frontier region. If Zachary could fund a Mad Engineer into existence, why couldn't he? And if he couldn't train him, then at the very least, he'd make sure this guy never fell into enemy hands. With that thought, Ethan picked up his pace, falling into step beside no paper on the big one. What's that dwarf's name? He asked casually. Mediterran, why do you care? The engineer glanced at him, his voice flat. You here to gloat? You feel humiliated, don't you? Ethan replied with a smirk. But let me tell you something, weak people always get looked down on. That's just the way the world works. Join me. I can make you powerful. Powerful enough to make them regret what they did today. No paper on the big one narrowed his eyes. Who the hell are you? That was a tier 2 guild. And you, some random nobody, think you can say a few words and expect me to follow you? To him, this was some random player spouting nonsense, trying to pick up a discarded piece of trash just because he'd been thrown out. What makes you think you're worth following? Ethan chuckled. This. With a flick of his hand, he disabled his name concealment, his true identity flashing above his head for exactly 3 seconds before vanishing again. Not a druid. Then he shrugged. You've got nothing left. If I wanted to scam you, what exactly would I be after? Ethan asked indifferently. I see potential in you. If you don't want to come, fine by me. And with that, Ethan turned and walked away. If no paper on the big one was smart, he'd take the opportunity. If not, Ethan wouldn't waste time begging. That would mean giving up control of the situation, something he had no intention of doing. As he watched Ethan's departing figure, no paper on the big one's expression twisted. Getting kicked out of his guild and publicly humiliated had been one of the worst moments of his life. Something he'd never forget. And now, not a druid had shown up, offering him a lifeline at the most coincidental moment possible. Too convenient. Was there some ulterior motive behind it? But then he thought about it. The Newbie King title. The series of game-breaking events Ethan had triggered since launch. Would a player like him really go out of his way to mess with a broke nobody? Or did Ethan really believe he was worth something? His real-life struggles mirrored his failures in the game, broke, aimless, and barely scraping by. If he let this opportunity slip, who knew when the next one would come? He had nothing to lose. Even if this was a scam, it was still better than wandering around with nowhere to go. Wait a second. Hearing the voice behind him, Ethan smirked. Hook, line and sinker. No paper on the big one caught up quickly. What do you need me to do? Engineering was the only thing he was good at, but because of his hidden subclass, even simple creations failed constantly. The wasted materials were why he had been kicked out of the guild. Simple. You'll be crafting engineering gear, Ethan replied as they walked. What's your hidden subclass ability? Demonic engineering. No paper on the big one muttered, scratching his head. Ethan noticed his hesitation. Go on, he encouraged. In his past life, he had only known that no paper on the big one could create demonic tech items. The exact mechanics had been a closely guarded secret, probably only known to him and Zachary. My trait is research va development, but that's also the problem, the engineer admitted. With engineering, if one component is wrong, the entire thing fails or explodes. And this damn trait constantly interferes, forcing me to experiment and innovate, whether I want to or not. His expression darkened with frustration. The constant interference made his normal engineering skills unreliable. He could barely complete basic projects without the trait sabotaging him. Ethan's eyes gleamed with interest. Oh? And what's the success rate after innovating? He pressed. I don't know. Engineering is never stable. I have to experiment over and over, fail repeatedly, and refine the process before I can craft something usable. Honestly, I regret choosing this path, but at the same time, can't let it go. Even if you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions, just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.